Welcome to Heartbreak Chronicles. Nathan Morgan stood in front of the door to his apartment, the sound created when the key was inserted into the lock hole jarring in the silence of the hallway. 3 months on the offshore rig were over, and he couldn't wait to see his wife and 2 children. He pushed the door open, expecting to hear familiar cheers and footsteps. But all that greeted him was dead silence. "Emily? Jack? Lily?" he shouted, his suitcase sliding casually to the floor. No one responded. Nathan walked into the living room, and a sense of foreboding began to creep into his mind. The room looked strangely tidy, yet empty. The family picture frames that had been hanging on the wall were gone, and the children's toys were not in their usual places. In the kitchen, the refrigerator door, once covered with pictures drawn by children, is now blank. He walked quickly to the master bedroom and opened the closet. All of Emily's clothes were gone. The same was true of the children's rooms, where drawers and closets were emptied, leaving only a few less important pieces of clothing and toys. Nathan felt a wave of vertigo as he sat down on the couch in the living room and tried to make sense of the situation before him. He pulled out his cell phone and dialed Emily's number, which went to voicemail. He called several more times in a row with the same result. The doorbell interrupted his thoughts. Nathan opens the door and sees Mrs. Nathan, who lives next door. Johnson, a retired teacher in his 60s. A look of unease and sympathy crossed her face. "Nathan, you're back," she said, her voice slightly shaky. "Emily asked me to give you this when you got back." She handed Nathan an envelope. Nathan took the envelope, his fingers shaking slightly. "Thank you, Mrs. Johnson. When did Emily and the kids leave?" Mrs. Johnson was visibly uncomfortable. "About 3 weeks ago. A man helped them move. The kids looked confused, especially Jack. The man was hard on them." She hesitated. "I heard he wanted to start the clock over, so he just wrote a random letter saying that the kids hated you," Mrs. Johnson added. "And the smug guy told me that men like you don't deserve families. You know, my husband was a driller too, and I can't stand to hear that." "Robert Kinsley?" Nathan repeated, the name not ringing any bells in his mind. "Yes, supposedly a successful real estate agent. Drives a very swanky BMW." Mrs. Johnson added, "I'm really sorry, Nathan." Nathan thanked Mrs. Nathan for his help. Johnson, closing the door, slowly opened the envelope. Inside was a note in Emily's familiar handwriting. "Wyatt's kids didn't love him anymore, so I started over with someone who could really take care of us. Don't try to find us. They don't want to see you again. Besides, I've already started the divorce process, so don't bother." An icy rage replaced the initial shock as Nathan read the letter. It's not just a betrayal. It's a misrepresentation of his relationship with his children. Jack and Lily love him immensely. They're always excited to pounce on him whenever he comes back from work. And Emily has the audacity to claim that they don't love him anymore? He walked towards the kitchen and opened the fridge to find it almost empty, with only a few bottles of beer left. He pulled out a bottle, but didn't open it right away. What he needed at the moment was not the numbing effect of alcohol, but a clear head. Nathan took out his cell phone and dialed a number he hadn't reached in a long time. "Chris, it's me, Nathan. I need your help," he said, his voice surprisingly calm. "I need to find Emily and my children and a man named Robert Kinsley." Chris Peterson was Nathan's college roommate and is now a private investigator. He didn't ask many questions and simply replied, "Give me the address and all the information you know. I'll get back to you in 3 hours." After hanging up, Nathan dialed another number, his attorney, Michael Davis. "Michael, my wife left with the kids, leaving a note saying they didn't want to see me. I need to know my legal options." 3 hours later, Chris sent a series of messages, an address, several photos, and a detailed report. Robert Kinsley, 37, twice divorced, with questionable professional credentials and multiple ethics complaints, currently lives in a suburban villa about an hour from the city, a villa that belongs to Emily's sister, Linda. Even more shocking, Chris discovers that Robert has a pattern. He specializes in pursuing married women whose partners travel a lot, and then leaves after acquiring a certain amount of property. As night fell, Nathan sat at the dining room table with all the information Chris and Michael had sent him spread out in front of him. His thoughts were clear and cold. It won't be a confrontation of emotional outbursts, but a well-planned battle. On oil rigs, it is not the overt crises that are the most dangerous, but the latent, undetected hazards. Nathan picked up his cell phone and dialed Emily's number. This time, she answered the phone. "You can't treat your own wife and children like that." Emily snarled as soon as she connected. "I'm just getting started, Emily." Nathan calmly replied. "By the way, have your new boyfriend check out the trunk of his car." "What are you talking about?" Emily's voice suddenly became strained. "The trunk, Emily. Have Robert check his trunk." Nathan hung up the phone, knowing that at this moment Emily and Robert must be running towards the BMW in a panic. What will they find in the trunk? Not something bloody or illegal, but a detailed dossier, documenting all of Robert's past deceptions, including his property transfers in 2 marriages and multiple ethics complaints against him. There are also photos taken by Chris showing Robert on intimate dates with 2 other women in the past week. This is just the first step, Nathan thought. Working on offshore rigs taught him one thing: always have a well-thought-out contingency plan. And now, his plan is unfolding. Robert Kinsley sat in the living room of his suburban villa, his face grim. His hand clutched a glass of whiskey while his eyes were cast into the darkness outside the window. Emily kept pacing the living room, a mixture of fear and anger on her face. "It's impossible," she repeated, her voice trembling. "How could he have found us so quickly? How could anyone be investigating you?" Robert slammed down his glass. "Shut up and let me think." There was a hint of panic in his voice, a tone Emily had never heard before. "The information in that trunk, someone was following me. Are you sure your husband is just an oil man?" Emily sat down on the couch and covered her face with her hands. "I'm sure. Nathan is nothing more than an offshore rig engineer who spends most of his time at sea. He doesn't have that kind of investigative skills or connections." "So how did he do it?" Robert questioned. "Those pictures were taken in the last 3 days." Upstairs, Jack and Lily are awakened by the sound of adults arguing. 10-year-old Jack crept out of bed and stood at the top of the stairs to eavesdrop. He heard his mother mention his father's name, and a glimmer of hope rose in his heart. "Maybe Dad will actually come get us," he whispered to his sister behind him. 8-year-old Lily nodded, tears in her eyes. "I want to go home," she sobbed. "I want Daddy." "Hush," Jack soothed. "Dad will find us." The picture I drew for him on his last business trip is still hanging on the fridge. What Jack doesn't know, however, is that Emily has thrown away all those paintings. Meanwhile, across town, Nathan sits in Chris's office as the two check out more information about Robert. "This guy's a repeat offender," Chris said, clicking his mouse to display the information on the screen. "He's wooed at least 4 married women in the last 5 years. 3 of whom were married to professionals who traveled for extended periods of time. He has a whole pattern. First, he builds a friendship, then he provides support when the marriage goes wrong, and finally, he drives the marriage apart and takes property from it." "He's picked the wrong target this time," Nathan said calmly. "I need more information on his career." "Supposedly he's a realtor?" Chris nodded, ostensibly. "He does have a license, but his business is fraught with problems. I found multiple complaints, including hiding defects in the property and misrepresenting the amount of the transaction. He changed agencies in 3 different cities, each time quietly leaving after the complaints had built up." Nathan thought for a moment. "What agency issued his license?" "The State Real Estate Board," Chris replied. "But it looks like he's been avoiding having his license revoked through some connection." "Then we need more direct evidence," Nathan said. "I want to know if he used Emily to get any of my financial information. I was just awarded a program bonus last month that was deposited into our joint account." Chris quickly checked Nathan's bank records. Sure enough, there was a large transfer 3 days ago to a newly opened account. This account is headed by Emily Morgan. A cold glint flashed in Nathan's eyes. "Looks like Emily and her new boyfriend are already dividing up my property." "This is exactly the kind of evidence we need," Chris said. "It's not just marital infidelity anymore. It's a property transfer. Combined with Robert's history, we have good reason to believe this is a premeditated hoax." Nathan took out his cell phone and dialed Michael's number. "Michael, we found out that Emily moved a large amount of money without my knowledge. I need you to freeze all joint accounts immediately and prepare an emergency custody order application." "Understood," Michael replied. "I've drafted the paperwork. Based on the information you have provided, we can apply for temporary exclusive custody. Considering the behavior of the other side and the circumstances the children may face, The judge will likely side with us. Nathan hung up the phone and looked at the picture on Chris' computer of Emily and Robert, who were standing intimately in front of the cottage door. I need to talk to my kids, he said, determination in his voice. I need to know what's really going on with them. Chris hesitated. Direct contact might spook us. And if Emily really has brainwashed the kids in some way, like her note says, my children love me, Nathan said firmly. And no matter what Emily tells them, I believe they know the truth in their hearts. I need to see them, but I can't spook them. We need a plan. The two men conferred for hours, finally settling on a course of action. Nathan understands that intelligence and timing are critical in this battle. Not only does he have to get his children back, but he has to make sure Emily and Robert pay for their actions. The next morning, Nathan executed the first step of his plan. He contacted Linda, Emily's sister, the actual owner of the villa. Surprisingly, Linda doesn't know that Emily has moved into her vacation home with the kids. What? I didn't even know Emily was there. Surprised, Linda said, that house is supposed to be empty. John and I are planning a vacation there next month. Emily didn't contact you to borrow the villa? Nathan pursued. Absolutely not. Linda's tone became serious. Nathan, what the hell is going on? Emily did mention recently that you guys have some issues, that you work too much, that there is tension in the family. But she never mentioned separation or being with anyone else. Nathan briefly explained the situation and Linda listened in shock. I can't believe she's doing this, Linda concluded. It's my house, and she has no right to live in it without my consent, let alone bring anyone else with her. I need your help, Linda, Nathan said, for Jack and Lily. Linda agreed without hesitation. Of course, it's my house and I have the right to decide who can live there. I could go there today and ask them to leave. No, Nathan said calmly. I have a better plan. A few hours later, Linda followed Nathan's advice and sent a formal email to Emily, copied to the management office of the villa complex, stating that she had not authorized anyone to use her property and demanding that all unauthorized occupants leave within 48 hours or the police would be called to deal with the situation. Meanwhile, Michael successfully froze all of Nathan and Emily's joint accounts and filed a petition for a temporary custody order with the court, attaching all of the evidence Chris had gathered, including proof of Emily's deceptive behavior, Robert's bad history, and unauthorized occupation of Linda's property. How come? Emily stared at her cell phone screen in horror. How did Linda know we were here? She said to call the police. Robert's face became more somber. This must be your husband's doing. I told you you shouldn't live in your sister's house. We don't have a choice, Emily argued. We need to save up for our own house. Besides, Linda almost never comes here. So how did she suddenly find out? That's not important, Robert snapped. What's important is that we have to get out of here now. Try and see if you can get some money out of the account. We need to find a new place to live. Emily immediately logged on to online banking, but to her horror, she was unable to access any of her joint accounts. The account is frozen, she called out, fear in her voice. Nathan froze all the accounts. Shit, Robert cursed. I thought you said he was just a regular worker. How could he have taken these actions so quickly? I don't know, Emily whispered, fear creeping in. Nathan's never been a very articulate person, but he's always. It's very planned. Just then, Emily's cell phone lit up, showing 17 missed calls, all from Nathan. When the phone rang again, she answered it with a shudder. You can't do that to your own wife and children, she shouted as soon as she got through, her voice full of accusation, but also revealing unease. I'm just getting started. Nathan's voice was surprisingly calm. Checked your new boyfriend's credit history yet? Emily felt a pang of fear. What do you want? I want my children, Nathan replied simply. They are innocent and should not be caught up in your selfish decisions. As for you and your new boyfriend, let him take a good look at his professional license application records. The state real estate board might be very interested in that. There was a sudden silence on the other end of the line. Emily felt a wave of vertigo as she turned to Robert. He said to check your license application records. Robert's face instantly turned pale. That can't be. Those records are confidential. But Nathan's next comment confirmed Robert's greatest fear. Falsifying references and work history is a felony. Robert, your ex-wife in Michigan will probably have a lot to say about that. Emily looked at Robert, and noticed the panic on his face. "Is this true?" she asked softly. Instead of answering, Robert rushed to his study and began frantically searching through his files. "I'll be picking up my kids tomorrow," Nathan continued, with undeniable authority in his voice. "And if you try to stop me or leave again, the consequences will be more than just a frozen account and the loss of your residence." Emily felt a chill come over her. She'd never heard Nathan speak in that tone before. As far as she could remember, Nathan was always gentle and accommodating, rarely getting angry even when she was being unreasonable. But now, there was a cold determination in his voice that she had never seen before. "Nathan, we can talk," she tried, her voice softening. "It's all a misunderstanding." "There's nothing to talk about," Nathan interrupted her. "You betrayed me, lied to my children, and tried to steal my property. I'll pick up Jack and Lily at 10 a.m. tomorrow. Make sure they're ready." The phone hung up, leaving Emily standing in the middle of the living room, feeling more scared and uncertain than ever. She turned slowly toward the stairs and saw Jack standing there with a hopeful gleam in his eye. "Is Daddy coming to get us?" he asked, a masked anticipation in his voice. Emily opened her mouth to say something, perhaps another lie, but after seeing the longing in her son's eyes, she realized she couldn't keep up the deception. "Yes," she finally whispered. "Your father will be here tomorrow." Jack's face bloomed into a big smile, and he turned and ran to Lily's room, loudly announcing the good news. Watching her son's back, Emily realized for the first time the gravity of the decision she had made and the impending consequences. At 9 o'clock the next morning, Chris's car was parked at the entrance to the villa area. Nathan sat in the passenger seat, his eyes fixed firmly ahead. "Ready?" Chris asked, turning off the engine. Nathan took a deep breath, more ready than ever. Meanwhile, Emily is nervously pacing the living room. Robert was in his study all night, claiming to be dealing with urgent work matters, but Emily suspected that he was dealing with the problems that Nathan had mentioned. Jack and Lily were fully loaded and excited, sitting on the couch with their backpacks at their feet. Emily looked at the eager expressions on the children's faces and was internally conflicted. "Do you guys really want to go with Daddy?" She couldn't help but ask. "Of course," Jack answered immediately. "Dad said he'd take us fishing when he got back this time." Lily nodded in agreement. "I miss Daddy. He promised to teach me new board games." Emily felt a tingle. For the past 3 months, she's told her children that Nathan has chosen work over family, even hinting that he may not return. And really, Nathan has been looking forward to spending time with his kids and has made plans. The doorbell rang, and Emily took a deep breath and walked to the door. When she opens the door, she sees a strange lady instead of Nathan. "Emily Morgan?" the lady asked, holding a folder. "Yes," Emily replied guardedly. "I'm Sandra Wilson, the court-appointed child welfare evaluator," the lady said calmly. "I understand that this situation is a bit sudden, but given the events that have occurred, the court feels that an evaluation is necessary before the children can be reunited with their father." Emily felt a wave of panic. "What assessment?" "I don't understand." Sandra took a step toward the house. "Very simple procedure. I just need to talk to the children individually for a few minutes to assess their emotional state and understanding of the situation at hand." Emily hesitates, but after seeing the court papers in Sandra's hand, she knows she has no choice. She moves out of the way and Sandra walks into the living room, smiling at Jack and Lily. "Hi guys, I'm Sandra. Can I talk to you guys for a few minutes?" The kids looked to Emily, who reluctantly nodded in agreement. Sandra took the kids to the kitchen and closed the door. Just then Robert came out of his study, his face grimacing. "Who was that?" "The evaluator sent by the court," Emily replied in a low voice. "She wants to talk to the kids." "Shit," Robert cursed. "I told you we shouldn't get involved in this kind of thing. I could lose my license right now." Emily looked at him in shock. "What are you talking about?" "Your husband somehow dug up my license application for some details," Robert said vaguely. "And now the state board is going to review my qualifications. If they find out those records have been tampered with." Emily's expression changed from shock to anger. "You falsified the license application? Is this what Nathan meant by faking references and work history?" Instead of answering directly, Robert looked anxiously out the window. "Is that your husband's car?" Emily followed his line of sight and saw an unfamiliar black sedan parked in front of the villa. The car door opened and Nathan stepped out. "He's coming." Emily said softly, both as a statement and a warning. Nathan went straight to the front door and knocked 3 times. Emily took a deep breath and opened the door. After 3 months of separation, her ex-husband stood before her looking more determined and confident than she remembered. He was no longer the gentle husband who always accommodated her, but a man of purpose. Nathan, Emily tried to control her voice. We should talk. Where are the kids? Nathan interrupted her, his voice calm and restrained. Just then, the kitchen door opened and Jack and Lily rushed out, heading straight for Nathan. Dad, the 2 children cried out in unison and jumped into Nathan's arms. Nathan dropped to one knee and hugged them tightly, closing his eyes for a moment as if to make sure it was real. I miss you all, he said, his voice revealing genuine emotion. Are you ready to come with me? Ready, Jack replied excitedly. Our bags are packed. Nathan stood up when Sandra came out of the kitchen with the transcript in her hand. Mr. Morgan, she nodded her head in greeting. I have completed my initial assessment. Based on my observations and conversations with the children, I don't see any reason to prevent them from being reunited with you. In fact, they show a strong desire to be with you. Thank you, Ms. Wilson, Nathan replied politely, then turned to Emily. Are the kids all set? Emily nodded, feeling a strong sense of loss of control. Everything is going according to Nathan's plan, and she is completely powerless to stop it. Robert stood at the other end of the living room with a somber expression. He visibly took a step back when Nathan's gaze turned to him. Kids, go get your bags, Nathan said gently. And then wait for me in the car, okay? Uncle Chris is there. Jack and Lily nodded and ran to get their backpacks, then ran out the door without even looking back as Emily watched in surprise. When the kids leave, Nathan turns to Emily and Robert, his expression turning cold. Now, about the 2 of you, he began, his voice low and calm. Emily, your actions have constituted the illegal transfer of funds and the unauthorized removal of your children. I have filed a divorce petition and full custody request with the court. Given your deceptive behavior and attempts to sever my relationship with my children, I have every reason to believe that the courts will be on my side. Emily felt breathless. Nathan, you can't do this. The children need their mother. They do need it, Nathan agrees, and that's why the court arranges for supervised visitation. But the priority is their safety and well-being, and you chose to cohabitate with a stranger with a history of fraud and lie to them. That's not responsible parenting. Nathan turned to Robert. As for you, Robert Kinsley, the State Real Estate Board will receive a detailed report tomorrow on your falsification of qualifications, including all the evidence. I will not press criminal charges against you, provided you leave my family's lives immediately and never come near them again. Robert paled, but managed to force himself to stay calm. You have no proof. The third MS. Helena Williams would see it differently, Nathan responded calmly, and she has agreed to testify as to how you manipulated her into forging those letters of recommendation. I'm sure Michigan law enforcement would be very interested in that. Robert was completely silent, fear flickering in his eyes. You have 24 hours to get out of the city, Nathan continued, or I will give all the evidence to the police and the media. With that, Nathan turned and prepared to leave. Emily suddenly stepped forward. Nathan, wait. What about our marriage? Is that the end of it? Nathan stopped but didn't turn around. The marriage was over when you chose to betray me and tried to cut me off from my children. From today, there is only a legal relationship between us and a shared responsibility for the children. Nothing else. With that said, Nathan walked out the door and didn't look back. He walked towards his car parked in the front yard where Jack and Lily were already waiting inside with expectant smiles on their faces. After Nathan got in the car, Chris started the engine and the car slowly drove away from the villa. Nathan looked in the rearview mirror and saw Emily standing in the doorway, her expression a mixture of shock, remorse, and fear. But he didn't feel the satisfaction or triumph he expected, only a strange calmness, knowing that this was only the beginning. The real battle, the battle in the courtroom, still awaited them. And inside the villa, Emily turned to Robert with anger and betrayal in her eyes. You falsified the certificate of eligibility? You've been cheating on me. Robert avoided her gaze. It's not that simple. So simple that you're ready to run away? Emily snapped, suddenly realizing that Nathan's threat did work. You're going to leave me and all this mess behind? Robert didn't answer, but his silence said it all. Emily felt a twinge of heaven as she dropped onto the couch, realizing she had made a terrible mistake that she might never be able to fix. A week later, Nathan sits in Michael's office to hear the latest legal developments. Jack and Lily have adjusted to being back with their father, and Nathan took 2 weeks off to focus on the kids and help them through this transition. The court has accepted our petition for full custody, Michael said, flipping through the papers. And considering the available evidence and Ms. Wilson's initial evaluation report, we were granted temporary full custody. Emily is allowed supervised visitation once a week. Has she asked for visitation already? Nathan asked. Michael shook his head. Not yet. As far as I know, she moved back into an apartment in the city and Robert did leave town. Looks like your threat worked. Nathan wasn't surprised. According to Chris' latest report, Robert has traveled to Arizona, apparently trying to stay out of trouble. He wondered if Emily had realized by now that she was being used. With regard to property division, Michael continued, the court is sympathetic to our request, given Emily's actions in transferring funds without your knowledge and her attempts to cut you off from your children. We may get a fairly favorable verdict. Nathan nodded. I'm not in it for the money. I only care about the kids. I understand, Michael agreed. But funding is also important for raising children. What's more, Emily's behavior was essentially financial fraud. She needs to be held accountable for that. Nathan thought for a moment. Make sure the kids' college fund is completely secure. The rest, I want to split fairly, but make sure Emily can't access any funds that might affect the children's future. Michael jotted down the instructions and then turned to another topic. Emily's attorney contacted me. She wants to resolve this out of court. Why would she think that? Nathan was a little surprised. As far as I can surmise, she's realized that she's at a disadvantage in court, Michael explains. And her actions, leaving the family, trying to cut you off from the kids, moving money around, they're all very much to her detriment. In addition, she lost her financial support when Robert left and may be facing financial difficulties. Nathan was silent for a moment, contemplating this information. Emily has never been good at facing difficulties on her own. Throughout their marriage, it was always Nathan who handled all the complex financial and legal issues. What terms did she make? He finally asked. Joint custody, although primary custody goes to you, Michael replied. And the property is split in half, but she's asked to keep the apartment. Nathan shook his head. No way. Considering her behavior, I don't trust her to be responsibly involved in child-rearing decisions. I want full custody. The most she can have is supervised visitation. As for the property, the condo was paid for with a down payment on my rig bonus, and I'm not giving her a dime. She wants money. She can ask her cheating boyfriend for it. Michael nodded. I will communicate your position, but be prepared that it may mean we have to go through the entire court process. So be it, Nathan said firmly. I will not compromise on the well-being of my children. After leaving Michael's office, Nathan drove to Jack's school. Today was his first day back at school. Throughout this process, Nathan has tried to keep the children's lives as normal as possible. He arranged for them to go back to their old schools, keep their old extracurricular activities, and make sure they had the opportunity to meet up with their friends. When he arrived at the school, he saw Jack standing at the entrance waiting for him with an easy smile on his face. It was a stark contrast to the nervous, restless boy of a week ago. How was your day? Nathan asked as Jack jumped into the car. Great, Jack exclaimed. Thomas asked me where I had been and I told him that my mom and I had gone on an unexpected trip, but now we were back. My teacher said I didn't fall behind too much on my homework. Nathan smiled. That's good, man. We're going to go pick up your sister now, and then we're going to go home and do our homework, okay? Jack nodded, but then his expression turned serious. Dad, when is Mom coming to see us? Nathan chose his words carefully. Mommy needs some time to think about some things right now. But the court said she could come and see you guys if she wanted to. Do you want to see her? Jack looked down at his hands. Kind of want to. But I'm still mad at her for telling those lies about you. She said you didn't love us anymore, that you chose work over us. Nathan's heart wrenched. Jack, I need you to know that I would never choose anything over you and Lily. I work for our family and to provide a good life for you. I love you all more than anything in this world. Jack nodded, tears in his eyes. I know, Dad. I told my mom she lied, but she said I didn't understand grown-ups. But I get it. I know you love us. Nathan reached up and rubbed his son's hair with love and pride in his heart. Despite all that he has been through, Jack has maintained his wisdom and strength. We'll get through this together, Nathan assured, as a family. Meanwhile, Emily sits in her lawyer's office, pale and haggard. The past week had been a nightmare for her. Robert left, taking all his promises and sweet nothings with him. When she tried to contact him, she found that his number had been deactivated. Mr. Morgan has rejected your offer, her attorney, Elizabeth, said, a note of helplessness in her tone. He insists on full custody, allowing you only supervised visitation. Regarding the property, he doesn't approve of you keeping the apartment. Emily felt a pang of despair. How could he? That's our home. That's our baby. Elizabeth looked at her client with a serious expression. Emily, I have to be honest and say that Nathan's position is legally strong considering your behavior. You took the children without your spouse's consent, tried to cut them off from their father, and transferred a large amount of community property. From a legal standpoint, all of this is very bad for you. But that's because I thought Nathan didn't care about family, Emily argued, desperation in her voice. He's always working. He's rarely home. The court will not accept that rationale, Elizabeth noted calmly, especially when there is evidence that Nathan has maintained contact with the children and is actively involved in their lives. It is my understanding that he works to support his family and that he spends as much time as possible with his children when he is ashore. Emily fell silent, tears gathering in her eyes. She realizes she's made a terrible mistake, falling for Robert's sweet talk and ignoring Nathan's years of loyalty and support. So what do I do now? She finally asked, her voice breaking. Elizabeth sighed. We could continue to fight this through the court route, but frankly, I think that would only delay the inevitable outcome and increase your legal fees. The other option is to accept Nathan's offer, which at least guarantees you'll get to see the kids and get some property division. Over time, there may be an opportunity to modify the visitation arrangements if you can demonstrate that you are a responsible parent. Emily looked down and pondered the options. She used to think she was making the right decision, running away from a husband she thought didn't care about her family and starting a new life. Now she's lost everything: her children, her home, her financial security, even her self-esteem. I want to see my children, she said finally, determination in her voice, and tell Nathan I accept supervised visitation. I'll prove to myself that I'm still a good mom. Elizabeth nodded. I will convey your decision. The first visitation will likely be scheduled for later in the week. As Emily left her attorney's office, she felt a sense of loneliness and regret that she had never felt before. She had a loving husband and a wonderful family, and now she had to meet her children as a visitor. That was the price of betrayal, and she was painfully aware that the price was much higher than she had imagined. The first supervised visit was scheduled for a Saturday morning at a center that specializes in such services. Nathan drove Jack and Lily to arrive, explained the situation to the supervisor, and then told the children that he would be waiting nearby. You'll be alone with your mom, but Miss Sullivan will be there to make sure everything goes well, he told the kids, and she'll contact me immediately if there are any problems. Jack nodded, his expression serious. I understand, Dad. Lily looked a little nervous. Is Mom still mad? Nathan stroked his daughter's hair. I don't know, baby. But no matter how Mom feels, remember it wasn't your fault, okay? Whatever happened, it wasn't your fault. The children followed the supervisor, Miss Sullivan, into the meeting room while Nathan walked to the waiting area. He felt a strange peace, knowing that he had made the right decision to protect the children while allowing them to continue their relationship with their mother. Inside the meeting room, Emily had been waiting for a long time, and her eyes immediately filled with tears when she saw the children. She went up to them and tried to hug them, but Jack stepped back while Lily hid behind her brother. Emily stopped, the expression on her face changing from one of anticipation to one of hurt and confusion. Jack, Lily, she said tentatively, I missed you guys so much. Then why did you tell us Daddy didn't love us anymore? Jack asked directly, with a sternness in his voice that a 10-year-old shouldn't have. Why did you lie to us? Emily choked, unable to answer immediately. Miss Sullivan gently encourages the children to sit down, and Emily sits across from them. I made a mistake, Emily eventually said. I said something I shouldn't have, and I'm sorry. But why? Jack persisted. Dad has always loved us so much. Even when he was working at sea, he was always calling, sending messages, and remembering all our important days. Emily looked down at her hands. You're right, Jack. Daddy does love you guys. I was. I was thinking stupid things and making bad decisions. I'm really sorry. Lily, who had been hiding behind Jack, finally whispered, Do you still love us, Mommy? Emily's tears immediately flowed. Of course I love it, honey. I'll always love you guys. You are the most important people in my life. This time, when Emily held out her arms, Lily walked up to hug her. Jack still kept his distance, but his expression softened a bit. For the next hour, Emily tries to reconnect with the kids. She asked them about their school, their friends, their activities. Slowly, the atmosphere became less tense, and even Jack began to talk more freely. When visiting hours ended, Emily hugged the kids again, and this time Jack accepted the hug, albeit somewhat reluctantly. Will I see you guys again next week? She asked, hope in her voice. If Dad agrees, Jack replied, making it clear who was making the decision now. Emily nodded, I'll talk to your dad. I love you all, and will always remember that. As the children left the meeting room, Emily sat alone, tears streaming silently down her face. Miss Sullivan gave her some privacy, but recorded the details of the meeting. When Nathan picked the kids up, he didn't immediately ask about the meeting, but waited for them to take the initiative to share. At dinner, Jack finally spoke up. Mom said she made a mistake, he said, and she said she was sorry for lying to us. Nathan nodded. That's a good start. How are you feeling? Jack shrugged. I'm still a little pissed. But she looked really sad, and I think she meant it. Where's Lily? Nathan turned to his daughter. I miss Mom, Lily said simply. But I like being with you more, Dad. Here it feels more safe. Nathan felt a rush of mixed emotions of relief and sadness. He's glad the kids feel safe, but also sad that they have to go through this. You can love both Mommy and Daddy, he said gently, even if we don't live together anymore. And you can always tell me how you really feel, whatever it is. That night, after the kids were in bed, Nathan received an email from Emily's attorney asking to set up a meeting to discuss custody and divorce terms. The email implies that Emily is now willing to accept more of Nathan's terms. The next day, Chris brought some new information. I found out more about Robert, he said, as the two sat in Nathan's living room. Not only did he have a history of falsifying his credentials, but he had also been indicted for fraud, although those charges were eventually dropped. More importantly, I found out that Emily may have been a victim as well. Based on my investigation, Robert used the same tactics with at least 3 other married women, each time approaching women whose husbands were traveling for extended periods of time, gaining their trust, and then manipulating them into leaving their husbands. Nathan frowned. Are you saying Emily might be manipulated? Chris nodded. Very likely. Based on the transcripts of the messages I've found, Robert seems to have consciously reinforced Emily's insecurities by suggesting that you don't love your family and only care about work. He may have even intercepted some of your messages and emails to make sure Emily felt ignored and unappreciated. Nathan was silent for a moment, contemplating this new information. He'd been so focused on Emily's betrayal that he'd rarely considered the possibility that she might also be a victim in some way. Does that change anything? He finally asked. Chris shrugged. It's up to you. Legally, this probably won't change much. Emily still made those decisions, still lied to the kids, tried to cut you off. But from a human perspective, Nathan sighed. I see these as evidence of betrayal, Nathan said forcefully. I just got back from work and found my family missing and an insulting note left behind. This is the worst betrayal I can think of. Now, I'm going to make sure you pay. A few days later, Nathan and Michael meet with Emily and her attorney. Emily looked even more haggard than the last time we met, with noticeable dark circles under her eyes. First, Michael began. My client insisted on maintaining full custody. This is non-negotiable given the current situation. Emily nodded and didn't object, which surprised Nathan a bit. However, Michael continued, Nathan is willing to consider re-evaluating the visitation arrangements after 6 months, possibly with a gradual reduction in supervision, if Ms. Emily can demonstrate her reliability and accountability. My client accepts these terms, Elizabeth said, regarding the division of property. The apartment will go to Nathan, Michael said firmly, considering it was paid for mostly with his winnings. In compensation, Emily gets to keep all of her personal property and 30% of the couple's joint savings. Elizabeth looked to Emily, who nodded in agreement again. There's one more condition, Nathan said coolly, and it's non-negotiable. Emily must publicly acknowledge her betrayal and waive all rights of access to the courts. If she tries to challenge this agreement in any way, I will release all of her text messages and photos with Robert so everyone knows what kind of person she is. Emily's face turned pale, but she was powerless to resist. Having lost her children, her family, her social status, and her financial security, she had no choice. My client accepts all conditions, Elizabeth says with difficulty. After the meeting, Emily tries to approach Nathan, but he simply turns away, completely ignoring her. Watching her ex-husband's determined back, Emily for the first time truly feels the consequences of her actions. She has lost not only her marriage and family, but also the most basic respect from those who once loved her. Nathan walked out of the lawyer's building feeling a sense of satisfaction that had been missing for a long time. His plan is being methodically implemented, dismantling Emily and Robert's lives one step at a time, just as they tried to destroy his. The road to revenge was long and precise, but each step brought him closer to total victory. As Nathan was about to leave, Emily suddenly said, "Wait, Nathan, there's something you should know. Robert stole some company papers from your desk, saying it was to analyze your money situation, but I now think there may have been another purpose." Nathan stopped in his tracks and turned to stare at her. "What papers?" "About that North Sea project." Emily's voice trembled. "He took a lot of pictures." Nathan immediately pulled out his cell phone. "Jason, it's me. There may have been a project data breach. Immediately lock down access to all North Sea projects and track any suspicious activity." Hanging up the phone, Nathan looked at Emily coldly. "If the company suffers as a result of this, you will also be listed as a co-conspirator." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Emily standing alone, fearfully realizing that she was in worse shape than she thought. After leaving the attorney's office, Nathan drove straight to the office to meet with the security team. If Robert did steal the project files, it could cause serious damage to the company. The repercussions of this betrayal may go far beyond the personal level. 3 months later, Nathan stood outside the courthouse, awaiting final judgment. A lot has happened in the last few months. First, the company's security team confirmed that Robert had indeed stolen sensitive data from the North Sea project and tried to sell it to a competitor. This led to a series of legal actions that culminated in Robert being arrested and facing charges of industrial espionage. Emily cooperated fully with the investigation, providing key evidence to help prosecute Robert. She has also been complying with all the terms of the divorce settlement, attending counseling on time and never missing a visit with the children. Supervision has been reduced, and she is now able to spend time alone with the children in designated locations. The children are also adjusting to their new living arrangements. Both Jack and Lily are doing well in school and beginning to re-establish their relationship with their mother, while bonding with Nathan more than ever. The court's decision affirmed the previous agreement. Nathan was awarded full custody, and Emily was awarded visitation for a fixed period of time, with possible increases over time. The property was divided in previously agreed-upon proportions, with Nathan keeping the apartment and Emily receiving a percentage of the savings. "It's over," Emily said quietly as the two walked out of the courthouse. Nathan nodded. From a legal standpoint, yes. Emily hesitated, then asked, "Do you think is there any chance we could be friends someday? For the kids?" Nathan considered the issue. Over the past few months, his anger had waned, replaced by a calmer acceptance. Emily's betrayal is still a fact, but he also sees the sincerity of her efforts to make amends. "No matter what kind of tests are done, the results will be the same," Nathan replied coldly. "They're my children, and you're trying to steal them from me. I will never forgive you in this life. Don't think you can regain my trust by acting pathetic." Emily accepted the answer, knowing that it had been more than she deserved. "The kids were with me on the weekends," she said, "and I would get them home on time on Sunday night." Nathan nodded. "They're looking forward to it." Jack mentioned wanting to go to that new science museum. A small smile appeared on Emily's face. "I already bought the tickets." The two men parted in front of the courthouse and each walked to his car. Nathan drove home feeling a sense of peace he had never felt before. He won the battle. protecting the children, saving his career, and even helping to bring Robert to justice. But this is not through explosive revenge, but through calm, systematic planning and action. When he arrived home, the children's babysitter, Mrs. Rodriguez, told him that Jack and Lily were playing in the backyard. Nathan walked to the back door and watched his son and daughter laugh in the fall sunshine. It's a picture worth everything. 6 months later, Robert Kinsley was sentenced to 7 years in prison on charges of industrial espionage and multiple counts of fraud. His case was widely reported in the media, especially how he specialized in targeting the wives of longtime business workers. This news forced Emily to move out of the neighborhood because everyone knew her as the woman who cheated on her husband and hurt her children. Emily rents a cramped apartment on the other side of town and barely makes ends meet with her part-time job. Her teaching credentials were suspended from review for conduct unbecoming, and her career prospects were bleak. Most painfully, although the court allowed her to have supervised visitation, Jack was almost unwilling to communicate with her and was cold and distant whenever they met. Even Lily is more dependent on her father than her mother. Meanwhile, Nathan's life is flourishing. The company promoted him to department head and doubled his salary for exposing industrial espionage. He purchased a new house to provide a fresh start for himself and his children. What makes Emily most jealous is that Jack and Lily are thriving under Nathan's upbringing, excelling in school, participating in a variety of activities, and completely unaffected by the negative effects of their parents' divorce. One Sunday afternoon, a year later, when Emily took the kids home as promised, Nathan stood at the door and didn't even let her in. The children briefly said goodbye to their mother and then quickly ran into the house. "Next week's visitation is canceled," Nathan said coldly. "The kids have school activities." Emily bit her lip. "But I've taken the day off to prepare for the day's events." "That's your problem," Nathan interrupted her. "Next time remember to check ahead." As Nathan was about to close the door, Emily called out to him. "I was just going to ask, what the hell is in the trunk?" "When you called about having Robert check his trunk." The corners of Nathan's mouth turned up slightly. "Nothing. It's just psyops. When I saw you rush out to check, the look of fear on your faces, I knew you had something in mind." Emily's expression froze. You've been manipulating this all along." "I'm just letting you and Robert have it coming," Nathan replied. "At your own peril, Emily." When he finished, he closed the door and returned to the cozy home that belonged to him and his children. Emily stood alone outside the door, tears sliding down her cheeks, finally fully understanding all that she had lost: her family, her children, her dignity, her social status. And it was all due to her own choices. And in his cell at the state penitentiary, Robert Kinsley was alone, surrounded by 4 cold walls and a long 7-year sentence. He once considered himself a master manipulator, but never imagined he'd meet an adversary like Nathan, a man who exacts the perfect revenge through cool, precise, and uncompromising actions. That's the end of today's story. For more captivating tales, hit subscribe and never miss an episode.